Hello. How are we all? We all good? Excellent. So we're almost at the end of day 2 of Industry Week, but we've certainly saved the best until last. Every year we try and secure a wildlife documentary filmmaker to come and speak to students, but usually they're working in some far-flung corner of the globe and sadly unavailable. However, I'm delighted that this year we've secured one of the brightest and most talented filmmakers working in this fascinating genre of television. Before I welcome our guest to the stage, let's take a look at a short clip of him doing what he does best.
My name's Dan O'Neill. I'm a wildlife presenter. I've been a filmmaker for 5 years. Every film I've made has been about searching for an animal. My whole life was about going on adventures. It's the first time an LGBT person has fronted a wildlife documentary entirely. When I looked at explorers on TV, if I looked at wildlife presenters, most of the ones you see are quite macho, quite, masculine, they're really burly, and they're never afraid of anything, and they don't show that side of them. And that's not me.
I'm a bit nervous to get closer.
If I'm scared, you're going to find out. I don't like spiders. I'm not all right with snakes. I'll get up to them, but I'm not all right with them. I love wildlife, I love adventure, but so do a lot of people. But there aren't that many people that are queer and are doing this sort of stuff. Hopefully, kids in the future growing up will be 14 years old like I was when I was at school. And instead of them having no one to look up to, maybe now they'll be inspired to get out and go on their own adventures. And I think that's really exciting.
So interviewing Dan O'Neill today will be Tim Smith from the Actors Workshop. So please give a warm round of applause as we welcome Tim and Dan to the stage.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think we should give Dan a bit more of a cheer than that, because you've seen the sort of work that Dan's done, right? Woo! Oh, thank you. Pretty special, though. How are you, Dan?
I'm very good, thank you very much. How are we? How's everyone in here? Nice.
Are you excited to hear Dan talk about his incredible adventures and share his pearls of wisdom, yeah? It sounded unanimous. So just before, I think what we're going to do, because if you've seen me do interviews before, I like to make it quite interactive. Dan's very keen to do that as well. So we might sort of bring the lights up in a second and just find out who's in the room, what sort of courses you're on, what your main interests are, so that we can tailor the talk today to kind of fit some of your needs. But before I do that, Dan, you're here at Confetti. What's it like being here? Yeah.
This place is so cool. I didn't actually study film for my undergraduate. I did it as a master's, but even there we didn't have stuff like this, and I just think if I'd had something like this, it would have been transformative. So it's really, really cool that you guys get to have not just these facilities, but have people from different careers coming in that I guess a lot of people don't have access to a lot of the time.
For sure. Cool. So can we whip the lights up very quickly? Our tech team, thank you very much. Lovely. Okay, so have we got anyone specifically interested in documentary filmmaking in the room? Put your hand in the air if that applies to you. Hi, Zach, you're right. Put your hands in the air. Any filmmakers, just general filmmakers? Yeah, got a few there. Put your hands up if you're like a camera operator or you want to get into kind of director of photography, yeah, kind of camera department. What about sound people? Ooh, lovely. Any presenters? Any people particularly? Oh, there's definitely a hand went straight up at the back there. One down here as well. Anyone specifically interested in wildlife or kind of natural stuff? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Did I miss anyone out?
We'll change that. They'll all be wanting to do wildlife after.
I think that he might change your mind when you hear what he has to say, because we've had a quick chat before this, and like you've blown my mind and inspired me. I just wish I wasn't like an old fogey, like don't do it all again.
You look younger than me. I just found out how old he was. Jesus, you look great.
62 is not too bad, is it? So, Dan, tell us, like, I think maybe, just before we start, is there anybody here that has like a burning question right now? Because this is a good time to ask. Let's get straight in. There's a hand up over here. So we have a roaming mic. Now we can establish the kind of audience connection. We can do a question, and then that might give us a jumping off point if it feels congruent.
What do you love about wildlife and/or nature?
Love it. Great question. What do you love about wildlife and/or nature?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I've loved animals. My dad is a scientist, but nothing to do with biology. He was a physicist and computer programmer. And he's quite a lot older than the other parents of my peers at school. So we never did the sorts of things that other kids did with their dad. We didn't play football together. We didn't really go and do adventurous things. But he really liked animals. So we kept... little fish. It started out as tropical fish, then we went into marine fish, geckos. At one stage we had 12 cats, and that's actually genuinely true. We always kept animals together, and then him and I trained a hawk when I was 13 years old together, and that sort of, outside of teaching me massive patience and perseverance, was kind of my interjection into dangerous animals and being obsessed with it. And then because we'd never really gone away on big trips, because he was always working. When I was in my early teens, he sort of was like, right, we need to do something. I need to go and see the world. I've been trapped in these four walls for a long time. And he took me and my brother to Central America, where in the Caribbean, where we saw jungles for the first time. And I remember I've got a photo of it, actually the first time I ever saw a rainforest, and I was sat on the side of this little wooden shack looking out, and I guess that was probably the moment where I knew I wanted to study animals and see the world, especially jungles, and that eventually took me to studying in the Amazon rainforest, which is what I did before I became a filmmaker.
Thank you very much. Great question. Well, that's a great jumping off point then. So you said you studied. Tell us about that kind of early sort of chapter in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I was never particularly that good at school when I was a kid. I was in like the bottom. We had sets in my school, so all the way from 8 up to 1, and I was in 8 for lots of subjects, including biology at one point. And I had to work really hard to kind of know to get to a position where I could study it myself. I left school when I was 16 after GCSEs, and then I went back after a couple of years out and a little course in directing film at a local charity film school as a mature student to study zoology at the University of Sheffield, and that was, transformative. That experience was like, I love animals, I love wildlife, this is what I want to do. And I joined our local TV society and started doing little presenting bits there and learning how to use cameras a little bit better, and that's where they started moulding together. And then went from there to doing a master's in wildlife film production at UE Bristol in partnership with the BBC Natural History Unit. So the rest is history.
So it was your passion for the natural environment and nature, wildlife, and then when you sort of that was solidified into a potential career when you embraced and fell in love with the filmmaking process as well. What's interesting about that, if we just look at that kind of more broadly speaking, there'll be people in the room that are maybe have interests that they want to then convert in the same way into a kind of a film practice. I remember there's a guy called Nico Turner. I don't know, you probably don't know him, but he went to Confetti and is somebody that was passionate about mountain bikes. And literally now he flies all over the world shooting mountain bike competitions and enduro trails and stuff. So it feels like there might be people in the room that want to do that. So I suppose what is your advice really to sort of capitalise on your interest, but then also capitalise on your love of filmmaking?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point with the mountain biking, because I guess for me, like, I don't think I have no interest in doing film outside of wildlife. Like, it's not really, I mean, I'm really interested in how local people live alongside animals, and especially indigenous populations, how they work with wildlife and work with their local environment. But outside of that sphere, I would never want to be in drama. I don't really want to do documentary outside of animals. So really, it's just my passion for life. And when I was working as a scientist in the Amazon, I quickly found on those expeditions that what I loved most was communicating about what we were doing, and storytelling for the environment. And I think that's where you kind of get your niche. I think a lot of people in film, I don't know if you guys any of you in this room would resonate with this, but like I was quite fractured in what I wanted to do at school. I moved in lots of different directions, and film was kind of something that allowed that creativity and that flair to feed into the things I loved, like biology, but maybe I wasn't ever going to be a professor that level, but it's something that I can get that artistry and connection from. It's hard to explain. But I would say if you have a passion and you love filmmaking, that passion should absolutely be something that you consider turning into your films, like mountain biking, wildlife, even if it's cooking, because I think you just get so much more staying power, and you don't burn out so easily if you absolutely love the thing you're filming.
Absolutely. It sounds like, you know, it's your passion that kind of sustains you. And I think it's really refreshing to hear people that are just like really focused, you know, because, you know, I think it's easy to kind of have your head turned when opportunities come up. But if your kind of heart is set on a path, then that's really lovely to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just love adventure. I love traveling. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with like early explorers like Humboldt and Schomburg, and the idea of going to a place that, you know, has not been explored. And even though everywhere actually has been explored pretty much, it feels like when you go to a country like Guyana, where I've been going for the past 10 years, 85% pristine tropical rainforest as far as the eye can see. The only way you can get to certain parts of it is by getting in a rusty old 4-seater bush plane with a piece of string holding the door closed, and that's kind of what drives me, you know, going and seeing. I mean, a couple of years ago we did this incredible expedition. It was me and a group of 7 of my mates, indigenous guys from Guyana, and we took these 2 metal boats and portage, so dragged all of our stuff up 6 major waterfalls and got 300 miles into the interior of the rainforest to try and find animals that had never seen people before. And I can tell you, that experience, it was not just the animals, but kind of being in that small little team, completely cut off from social media, connectivity, all that stuff that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and being with tapirs, the largest terrestrial animal in the Amazon, within touching distance, and it not being afraid of us, and ending that expedition being about 100 feet from a wild rainforest jaguar, and it looking at me and me looking at it, and that probably being the first time it had ever seen a human being before. It's those experiences that I live for. And as a filmmaker, it just feels like they haven't happened unless you've caught them on camera. And having got that bit, it really is something special. Yeah.
And we're going to see the portage moment that you discussed, and some of those really kind of magical moments where you encountered, well, you basically kind of found the treasure. Yeah. You know, you found what it was you were looking for.
It's like Fitzcarraldo. If people like Werner Herzog, it's actually films like that are so inspiring to me. Actually, a lot of Werner Herzog's films I really like.
Oh, I looked at Werner Herzog, and then made an appearance in Mandalorian as well, which was even nicer. Well, maybe we should watch one of the clips. I don't know if it will come up first or not, but the portage is in one of your clips, isn't it, where the boat was dragged up? So, tech team, would it be all right to maybe watch another clip that give us some more insight into what you do?
Anaconda.
Did you see it? Oh, nice. That's right. That's okay.
It's the same river.
Eunictus marinus, the green anaconda. This isn't actually the longest snake in the world. That's the reticulated python. But anacondas are by far the heaviest snakes in the world. She's massive. No wonder they call this place the land of giants, eh? It looks all still right now, but she can move lightning fast. They can take huge animals, sizable animals. They'll wait just like this, but by the side of the water or even underwater, and they'll grab and immediately start coiling around, and they suffocate their prey. They'll swallow them whole. It could easily overpower you, right?
Oh yeah, they would have no chance really, to be honest.
God, look at that. It is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Oh, should we pause that bit then? We can come back to this bit in a bit, can't we? So yeah, well, tell us about that then. So,
well, that's Eunictus marinus, the heaviest snake in the world. Anyone ever seen an anaconda in the wild? Anyone? Yeah. Well, I'll have you know, that wasn't... so that was a couple of years ago. But I, just last summer, for that show you saw at the beginning, Giants, got in the water with a 20-foot-long female anaconda and swam with it. It was absolutely terrifying. But they're amazing. And I said there that they suffocate their prey. That's actually not technically true. When an anaconda, they're basically fully muscle, right? This entire great big noodle of muscle. But when they grab their prey, that mechanism, that evolutionary strategy to immediately start coiling around, they are so powerful and so strong that it's not actually suffocation that kills the prey. They squeeze so tight that the blood stops moving around your body and your brain is starved of oxygen within about 30 seconds. That's how strong they are. Amazing animals.
That is insane. When you got into the water with an animal that size, an anaconda, I mean, was there any safety team around you? What was the sort of protocol that it comes in with that?
So it was in a really cool location in Brazil called Bonito, where the water is crystal clear. All the tannins have been taken out by the limestone underneath. And so it's the one spot in the world where an animal that is evolutionary strategy really is to go into the water and completely disappear. They're ambush predators. And that's why they have that green colour, because it completely moulds them into the background. But there, the water crystal clear, blue when you look at it. And because of that, PhD students and scientists all around the world use that one particular location to study anacondas underwater, because nobody knows much about them at all because of their movements and where they go. So there was an incredible PhD student, Juliana, who was like, it's safe if you get in the water. I don't know if she just hated me and she wanted me dead, but she told me I'd be all right, so I jumped in.
Have you ever found that when you've been out on location and there's been other documentary teams, they're filmmakers, and you're sort of all, it's a bit of a bun fight to get the shot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so Giants, this series we just did, it was the first time I've been on a big series with, like, a crew, because usually it's just me and my mate Chris. And on our way out of Kenya, we're jumping into, like, that we're bumping into crews from different wildlife film companies, and yeah, you see them all the time. We were in a hotel with another crew from people I knew in Bristol, because the wildlife community is so small. Happens.
And you were telling me, just prior to coming out here, about the sort of wildlife filmmaking community, and that, you know, it's quite a small circle, and you sort of got pretty good relationships. And yeah, I'm sort of interested to know sort of how the bearing that has on your career, really.
The relationships?
Yeah, in the community that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the wildlife filmmaking community. I think, like, prior to getting into film, I'd heard a lot of stuff about like how cutthroat things are and how, like, scary the competition is. One thing I find with wildlife film, and Bristol specifically, where I'm based, people are cool, and there's a lot of collaboration, and the sense of community is really nice. Like, all of my mates are in wildlife film, and, you know, 95% of wildlife films in the world are made, you know, at some point through Bristol, and so that the community is quite big, and there's a lot of productions happening. So it's a great place to be. Yeah.
And from what I understand, there's a huge amount of opportunity for people to take their film training and TV production training and convert that into careers in wildlife photography and film. So you have some insight into how these young people and people here may be able to do that and signpost some of those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know loads. I'd studied biology, and many people in the Bristol kind of wildlife film community study biology as well. But there are people from so many different kinds of backgrounds, and they're actively looking for people from, you know, different backgrounds to get into film in the area. There's so many productions jumping up all the time. Channel 4's moving there or have already moved there. Netflix has opened an office there through Wild Space Productions, which makes wildlife films. Silverback Films that made Our Planet. There's WildStar making huge Nat Geo Disney series. BBC Natural History Unit's obviously there. And their opportunities are jumping up all the time. Like, I was just on the Bristol Production Talent Facebook page. If anyone's interested in getting a job in Bristol in wildlife film, that's a really good page to go to, Bristol Production Talent. And there's just, like, development jobs popping up here and there and everywhere. But yeah, I've known people. So my best mate, Gail, who I lived with in Bristol for a long time, she had no background in biology, no study of zoology or anything like that, and she was teaching people diving on her, like, gap year out in the Philippines, and she took out a crew to find some animal, and she's like, these people's job is cooler than mine. So she went and did a course like you guys and moved to Bristol, and now she's just got a camera bursary. Do you guys know camera bursaries much?
Be great to hear more about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if this goes across to different fields, but in Bristol specifically, you know, there's these big companies like Silverback Films, BBC, Wildstar, and every year they will have a series of bursaries that they give out to sort of early career camera operators, where you'll get a PAYE or permanent fixed contract for either a year or 18 months, where you just go out on shoots. So you could be going to all over the world for a production. And they basically, it's the slipstream into becoming a natural history camera operator. And those things are advertised on their websites, and BBC posts them publicly as well. But that's a really great place for camera operators to sort of like cut their teeth and get out on those location shoots.
I mean, that's potentially very life-changing for people if they kind of follow up those leads. Just whilst we're on that subject of those opportunities, is there any questions from anybody particularly interested in how to make the most of those sort of opportunities, or interested in taking those steps? Lights going up, hands staying down. Well, while we wait for you to decide if you have something to ask about that, I have a question, and that is because every time I watch documentaries like this, or shows like this, and when I watch it there, I think, do you ever run out of information, or do you kind of get flummoxed and have to Google stuff?
Yeah, but it's really tough when you're in like the middle of the jungle and you have no idea. Often I'll find like an animal and I'll be convinced it's a new species, and I'll film this whole thing being like, I found a frog and no one knows what it is. I need to get back out in like 3 weeks' time and be like, no, everyone knows what the frog is. No, all the time. I mean, it's I have a specialism in the Amazon, but like I did a project with snow leopards. I think you'll show something from that soon. And I know a bit about cats, but a lot of the other animals there I was learning from the local people. So you just go out with a local team, and often the people who work with these animals, they know absolutely everything, and that's where I get my information from. Yeah. And
talking about the sort of logistical elements, because there'll be people in the room that are keen, as they've already shown us, that they're interested in filmmaking and documentary filmmaking, and whilst they may not end up in wildlife photography, they may end up having to kind of do the same sort of production logistics that you're doing. So what is it like going out for a show like we're seeing here, and how does it all work? Like, how does it get produced?
So I'd say there's like two ways that I've had. There's the typical TV route, so doing a series like Giants, where, you know, I was brought on as the host for a series that had already been developed. Sometimes you'll develop a show and it'll be around the presenter and what their kind of background is. But this one was, it's a CGI series about the biggest animals that ever lived, and kind of going on an expedition, circumnavigating the world to find the biggest ones alive today, and how we can learn from those extinct ancestors how to save the ones alive today. And in doing that, they prepared me. There was a lot of scripting and understanding what that would look like in terms of what my expectations of things that I needed to know would be. But then really just going through with the production managers and the series producers it's interesting actually. Like, a lot of it is safety. Because, you know, some of the locations that we went to, you know, Kenya's, I think, is it 20 years in jail for being gay there? I'm not sure. But, like, those sorts of things where, you know, we had to sit down and discuss what we were going to do in these locations if something was to be picked up on. So we ended up deciding as a group that we were going to let all of our fixers and local teams know early on, so that if anybody found out, we wouldn't get in hot water. And anyone that they started speaking to from a fixer department, so fixers are people that set things up in location for the crew to arrive, and then they make everything work easy and smoothly once we're there. And if any issues would arise, then we wouldn't work with that team and we would move on to a different place. It's things like that are really big. And I think in wildlife film, that's a really, really big and important role, so production managers and production coordinators, because, you know, oftentimes those safety things, they're really, really present and very real in in some of the locations people are going to. There's a shoot soon going out to Oman that I've heard about, and my friend is on it, and she'll be the only female member of the team. And you know, there's lots of things to discuss there, and there's shoots going out to Antarctica where they've got to get a boat that's never been going to a location before with an icebreaker on the front. I guess it's probably, if anyone's interested in becoming a production manager or a production coordinator, massive shortage in wildlife film right now, so you'll get snapped up in about 5 minutes. But that's, yeah, it's a lot of that sort of stuff. And then, I guess, sorry, I'll just say, because you asked the other one. For me personally, I used to organise a lot of my own expeditions with research sorts of things. And so I set up a lot of expeditions to make films. So a lot of my indie films are, I'm going to go and find a tiger and learn about its conservation, or I'm going to find a snow leopard, or the Philippine eagle, which you saw briefly there. And I'll set up, it's a lot of getting permits, making sure that you're filming things legally, because you can get in a lot of hot water there, especially with drones. Getting the Environmental Protection Agency to allow you to go into national parks and places like that. There's a lot of like applications, and making sure that you know what you're doing is allowed, because you could even get stopped at an airport and you don't have a carnet for the equipment that you have, and you can be turned away, for example, or not be able to get out after you've left. So yeah, a lot of Googling and finding out the issues.
So it's interesting because you talk there about the difference between being sort of an independent filmmaker and also a sort of TV commission basis. But you have a production coming up, which is something that you're doing. Mm-hmm. Would you mind telling us a bit more about that? Because from my understanding of it, it's something you're doing off your own bat. You know, you're using it as a training mechanism for students, and then you're being entrepreneurial about it because you're negotiating branding deals and sponsorship, which you know, it really shows that you're not just a filmmaker or a presenter, you're sort of an entrepreneur as well.
I think that is kind of like there's so much opportunity now with brands and things like that, especially with social media. So this project I'm working on. Soon in June, I'm going to work as an ornithologist. I'm leading some people to catch birds, tropical birds in Honduras in the cloud forest, and we've been getting pretty amazing access to Casuco National Park out there, which is, you know, it's quite a dangerous country, Honduras. Like it's much better now, but in terms of that access, it's really privileged, a really great place to go. We're going to be having catching and ringing incredibly beautiful and interesting and rare tropical forest birds. And so I'm working with a company, I probably can't say it at the moment, a filmmaking company, and I'm going to make a short film and some content using their cameras on that expedition. And it's just so that, you know, you're getting multiple things going at the same time, and also that helps the research organisation because we're collecting footage and content that they're able to use. And I think that that's the new world of the filmmaker, that like alongside your kind of core area. We were talking about this earlier, but I think the best filmmakers these days are super T-shaped. You know, you've got strong central abilities in one area, but you kind of reach out into other things, and that might be fundraising ability, setting up editing, for example. If you're a filmmaker, being an editor as well is super important, and keeping that going. But even as far as like brand-related stuff, modeling, like social media, all those things, like it really, really helps. And it means that if you want to be an independent filmmaker, nowadays it's a lot more easy than it was in the past.
The clip we were about to look at was kind of bird-related, so maybe we could pick that up. But just before we play that, if that's okay, tech team, then I was just going to ask you, because what a project like you have coming up, which you know, it sounds incredible, and it's even more incredible really, because no one's forcing you to do this. This is a project that you want to do. You're not getting paid for, and it's a load of work on top to kind of finance it as well, and not only that, support students in the process. How long does that take to pre-produce? What's the pre-production time on a project like that? How long?
Yeah, I mean, it's really long. I mean, that one it's still underway, so I'll let you know after it's finished. But this one, with the eagle there, that was a indie film that I I made for my YouTube channel, which at the time had 100 subscribers, and I spent like all my savings going and I just wanted to see the bird in the wild. It's like a really cool bird, and no, it is. It's such a cool bird. The Philippine eagle's the most critically endangered large raptor in the world.
We're going to see it in a second. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only bird of prey that has blue eyes. Absolutely gorgeous. Really? Yeah, really, it's so cool. Well, you'll hear in this clip how amazing it is. But it's that location in the Philippines, in Mindanao Island. I couldn't get any insurance to go there because it's a political red zone. And the forests are occupied by an ISIS affiliate group as well as rebels that are going against the government, and the Philippine eagles exist in those forests. So I went in a blacked out car with the Philippine Eagle Foundation into those forests at night to see if I could find this radio-collared bird and see it in the morning. So we hiked up this mountain in pitch black in the dead of night, went up there, stayed in this little tent camp, woke up in the morning, like, thank God we saw the bird. And then he was like, right, it's time to go, Dan, we have to leave. And we got out of there before people would notice that we'd gone. But I'm very interested in that. I just started my PhD a couple of years ago. It's currently on hold, about war and how it impacts wildlife. And it's really interesting how conflicts, especially armed conflicts, can impact and save wildlife. Las FARC in Colombia has held massive areas of rainforest that would otherwise have been decimated by logging, mining, concessions.
That's such a crazy thing to think about.
It's so interesting, but also, when those things go away, what happens then? It's really interesting. But anyway, we digress.
So you're talking about Queen of Birds, right? Which is the short film that you made. And just before we see a clip of that, and just to clarify, you went there without any insurance?
No, I didn't have any insurance.
So if and I'm sure we're not sitting here advocating that, are we?
No, God, no, don't do that.
Just for complete transparency, don't go away without production insurance.
No, but it was safe. It was safe for them. Like I chatted. I mean, I do a lot. The nature of my work is it's a little bit like sometimes a bit more hairy. Yeah. But I was working with the Philippine Eagle Foundation, and they were very like. They know these people that are in these forest areas. They work with them, actually, because no one hates the eagles. So they'll let those people in to come and help the conservation. They work with indigenous communities in there as well. And I was working under them and with them. So I knew I had relative safety. It's just sometimes when, .gov isn't going to help you out,
But I mean, what it does tell us is your passion just is the driver behind what you do, and you'll sort of go at all costs to pursue your dreams. Well, in that case, it'd be great to see that clip of Queen of Birds, if we may.
It's possibly the most amazing creature I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm obsessed with harp eagles, but I think I've just found a bird that's even more beautiful. You can tell instantly that Philippine eagles are not similarly related to the Steller seagull, the harpy, the white-tailed seagulls. They are completely different face, much smaller talons, beautiful coloration on the legs, those stunning wings. Look at that incredible crest. And the most amazing thing for me possibly is the eyes, because I've never seen a raptor that has blue-grey eyes, and that's because Philippine eagles are the only ones on the planet that have that colour of eye. And seeing it for the first time up close is pretty incredible.
It's beautiful. Anyone here with blue eyes, grey eyes? Yeah. Does that mean I've got grey eyes?
They're all related to the bird. They're cool though. They're like totally random little. They're the largest terrestrial predator in the Philippines. There's no like tigers. There's no big animals out there. So they actually fly down onto the ground and they'll walk around and hunt on the ground. It's so weird.
Hunt what?
Little forest rats, big forest rat things. Little deer. They used to be called the monkey-eating eagle, actually, but they changed the name for PR and they made it the national bird, and it actually worked quite well. Filipinos are very patriotic.
People hate big rats, but they don't hate monkeys, so you can't be killing them. I think what's really apparent is just the passion that we keep talking about, and just how energised you are when you are in this environment. But not only that, when you just kind of go into, you're not even in presenter mode, you're just in like, I love this shit mode, which I think is great. We can swear, can't we? And that really, really comes across. Do you just feel it just come out of you at that moment?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think I'm a very good presenter, really, to be honest. But like when I'm in a situation where there's something I really, really like, it's just you forget about the camera. We were talking about this before. Like being on camera is like really weird. And like presenting, I think is something you have to get used to over time, because like people are like, just be yourself, and you can't be yourself when someone puts a giant camera in your face, especially when you're like, it's quite emotional. So that's why I think when you're really passionate about what you're up against or what you're seeing, then it's really easy to forget that it's there. And I absolutely love that bird, so it wasn't too hard.
And like what I find really endearing about it is it's not just passion, it's like you kick into like zoologist mode as well, and like the kind of way that then you share your knowledge about it, it sort of it's a seamlessness to it as well.
Well, I love when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a paleontologist. I was obsessed with probably like every child in the world. I was obsessed with dinosaurs, and I think what I love so much about birds, and specifically raptors, is they are dinosaurs. You know, people think that dinosaurs went extinct when that massive meteor hit Mexico, but they didn't. Many dinosaurs survived that, and they, over evolutionary history, have turned into birds. One group of archosaurs turned into birds, and you can see that in their feet and their eyes, and it's amazing. We again, not to keep referencing things that we've talked about, but it's really helpful because it means that we can reference them now. We talked about the take 1 and take 7. And you said what you noticed when you were doing your independent productions, and you'd go off and you'd film stuff, that a lot of the kind of reactions to what you were seeing were quite kind of authentic and genuine. They happened in the moment. But as you started to kind of work with bigger film crews with lots of heads of department, then quite often that process changed and it had implications. Do you mind kind of sharing some of that experience? Yeah. When I'm just out with Chris, who's the DOP and director I work with, and we've got this flow going where it's easy to get things on the first take, and also like we'll cut corners a bit, like we'll put a top mic on and we won't collect sound in any other way. When you're out with a big crew, it's actually like, it's so daunting with the series producer there, guy with sound, camera, and then there's like contributors around, and things go wrong all the time, and you will say something like, the elephant's walking past for the first time, and this has actually happened in Giants. The elephant we were there to see appeared on the first day, and it was meant to be this big journey where I was going to find it at the end. We arrived in Africa on my first day working on a big production, and then I'd never seen an African elephant in the wild, and they were like, right, we've got the one, we've got to do it now. If we don't do it now, we won't see it again. Right, Dan, it's the end of the show, bring up the emotion. Right, it's the end of the show, Dan, get in. Everyone's like panicking, no one's worked together before, the sound guy's freaking out, the cameraman's freaking out, and they're like, have emotion, Dan, you're seeing the elephant, have emotion, you've just done this entire experience, like, how do you feel? And I was like, and they literally say you've got to A, turn it on, but B, it was like 7 takes, and you've got to keep having the same emotion. You're like, I'm so excited to see the elephant, and that's the hardest part, I think. And that's why it's funny. So does anyone know Steve Backshall? Amazing expedition presenter, brilliant guy.
A lot of nods around, I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, he didn't study zoology at university. He studied drama and English at Exeter University, and his drama degree, I bet you that's helped him out more than biology does.
And are we allowed to talk about this? You did a bit of drama yourself, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
So, and has that helped you? So you did some acting and theatre, musicals, and how has that sort of affected things?
Definitely. I was quite shy when I was a kid, and I did that to kind of come out of my shell a bit. And it really helps, because it's in terms of standing in front of people and doing something which is a little bit like, it just feels a bit weird at first, and another thing is that it's easy to drone on and on and on and on and not finish a sentence to help the editor, and I think those experiences, like doing a bit of improv, really helps with that.
That's really interesting, and sort of understanding the cut point is really useful. So so back to that question then, sort of take 1 versus take 7. We've just watched a couple of clips there. We've seen you with an anaconda. We've seen you with the eagle, a Filipino eagle. Yeah. And so were any of those fake reactions? Were any of those moments where you'd already done it once or twice or 3 times?
Anaconda was the first one. The Philippine eagle one was like the 7th or 8th one, because it kept jumping off the stump. And then it did this great thing with its wings, and Ben, the camera guy at the time, was like, "Do it now, don't fuck it up."
Did anyone get fooled then? Did anyone really feel that Dan was? Or did
Still
you?
liked the bird.
Yeah, of
on
course.
set. Let's go.
It's a nice bird. Yeah. So, but I always find that interesting because I think we assume that it is the first time, and clearly, you know, your acting ability comes in. But I suppose it's a fine line, isn't it? Because you're not sort of fully acting. You still love and, you know, are in the moment really in those points. Yeah,
I think that's something that people don't talk about, like, because you have to be authentic and you have to be really interested in your subject as a presenter. You have to, but otherwise it's really obvious, I think. But like there is an art to presenting that, like, it's, you know, it's something that you're never going to be good at it at first, and I think people don't realise that, and they don't like give enough weight to that, because it took, like, and I didn't at first. I was like watching people on screen, I was like, that's so cool, like how lucky they are to have just been plucked and they're put into it. But it is actually, there's a lot of different moving parts and, you know, things that you really got to think about while you're doing it.
and it didn't happen overnight for you either. You grafted, worked, you tried different things, you made your own productions. You know,
some really embarrassing stuff that's still on the internet.
Cool, we'll check that out later. And what's that? Sorry.
Yeah,
The archive. Of course, we'll dip in. Of course, yes, nostalgia. I like this. We've got a little running commentary in the background. And you talked there about the sort of the authentic voice, which is something that. So I've been doing a lot of the interviews downstairs with all the guests that come off. A lot of them say about finding an authentic voice, and that's something that you talked about in your opening video. How you just are different to what's gone before and what you represent. So would you mind sharing more about that kind of authenticity?
Yeah, I mean, well, you saw there, like at the beginning, I didn't feel like I had a seat at the table, really, because I wanted to do stuff like adventures, expeditions, and early on in my career, I went for a meeting. They were going to retrace the steps of Darwin on this series. It never got commissioned, and it's an idea that's been floating around for a while. But they were looking for the kind of Darwinish person to go on the Beagle-style boat and his adventures around South America and to the Galapagos eventually. And I went in and I got super excited. I was like, no! And honestly, I'm probably a bit camp, to be honest. And when I left, the person in the room, and I don't think she meant to be bad about it, really, to be honest, but she called my agent and she was like, he's a bit gayer than we expected that he was going to be. And at the time, I was like, "Why did I?"
She told you that. The fact that she told you.
My
that.
agent. Oh,
yeah, you get on well then.
Jo's great. I mean, she'll just tell you exactly how it is. Sometimes, even if it hurts. No, she's amazing. She's the best agent ever, and she's the reason
We should talk about agents because that's probably quite pertinent for them. But carry on, please.
Yeah, but she just told me that that's what they had said, and for ages I thought it was my fault. I was like, "Why did I do that? I should have just gone in that room, and I should have been like really like, yeah, I'm Bear Grylls, and like, I'll keep you all alive." And it wasn't for ages, actually, into lockdown, where I was coming back from that expedition, which a lot of these clips are from, and like I've been doing it for years, and I was a scientist, and like I do have quite a comfort in the Amazon, and I've been doing all these things, and I was in a hotel like quarantine, and I was like, what the fuck was she saying? It's not fair. Why does like that part of my personality have anything to do with my ability to keep somebody alive in the jungle or to understand biology? And I went onto a deep dive about it, and actually, you know, there's an organisation called Pride in STEM that looks at, you know, the inequalities in science and STEM-related careers, and actually a huge number of people who go to university to study science don't carry on if they're LGBT compared to their straight counterparts, and there's huge amounts of statistics and data that show that like LGBT people don't feel like confident in doing these things, and really it's because you can't be what you can't see. And there's never been anybody on screen as an adventurer or a wildlife presenter in this space, and I think that that's why people like that woman in that room were like, oh, he's gayer than we expected, because she's got a search image in her mind for what that person was going to be, and it just wasn't a gay person. And I think that's what I'm super passionate about, because, you know, all of those things from that moment in quarantine when I had that realization and I started to be like, no, this is wrong actually, and I can be who I want to be and still do this stuff, it became not what held me back but my superpower. And now when I do these shows, I have no worries being like, no, it's horrible. It's like the snake's really scary. And then getting in the water with the great white sharks in Australia or the saltwater crocodiles that they're putting me at. They really wanted me dead, didn't they? That doesn't, it doesn't scare me to be like that anymore. And actually, it's turned out that that's what people like. So, yeah.
It's sort of like it's become your USP, sort of superpower almost.
Yeah, what makes you different is your superpower. It's what makes you amazing. And, you know, who wants to fit in anyway?
Yeah, and the only thing that people can't do is you. So, yeah. And you were talking about the sort of like the impact that hopefully will have on other people that you're sort of blazing a trail for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I get messages all the time from, you know, LGBT people around the world that have said that seeing somebody in that position is really important to them. And I think that in talking about authenticity and, like, I sometimes think, like, what's the moral value of me being in this position? Like, why should I be talking about these animals? Especially when you're abroad and, you know, you're travelling across to another culture, another set of places, and, like, what is the importance of it? And I think, you know, that is it for me, you know, because I'd like to be that for somebody that I didn't have when I was a kid.
And just on that, you mentioned about being in Kenya, and then, you know, that then actually became like a real world problem in a very different way with very severe consequences. So how did you talked a bit about the kind of wider team, but how did you manage that situation and emotionally and kind of morally?
Yeah, fine. I mean, it's really great. Like, most of the world is pretty open, and even if it's got laws that say certain things, most of the time it's the people that you're talking to, and most people are generally pretty cool. And we found that in Kenya, and the people we work with were really cool. Amazingly, I've been going to Guyana for 10 years. I was talking about it earlier. It's the only country in South America it's still illegal to be gay. And for years I didn't come out, but now I have, and, like, everybody's really cool. And it just turns out that it's an old colonial legacy of the British Empire that even exists in the first place. So it's like, I think I was so afraid to go to countries like Kenya, and it's really opened my eyes. Obviously, I'll be smart, so it's still illegal to be gay in 36% of the world, but it definitely has opened my eyes to going to those places for sure.
Well, I mean, and everything that you're doing is part of that change as well. You've got to be, what's it Gandhi said, be the change. Yeah. Well, I think it's probably a good time to have a look at another clip if you're up for that.
This is pretty horrible. She is absolutely grisly. This is Theraphosa blondie, or the Goliath bird-eating spider. This isn't actually a very, very big one. Could well be a male. The females are larger. I don't actually want to get too close because the main form of defense that this spider uses isn't its inch-long fangs, but actually the back of its abdomen. It will get its two back legs and scratch it up, and it fires all of these hairs into the air, which get into your throat, into your eyes, on your skin, and incredibly itchy. Oh my God.
This is the biggest spider in the world.
It's called the Goliath bird-eating spider, but contrary to the name, they're actually nocturnal predators, and therefore probably don't eat very many birds at all. They mostly catch insects, actually, and very occasionally small, tiny little mammals. But they're ambush predators, so they'll wait in the burrow for an unexpected victim to just walk past, and then they launch themselves out and inject venom. All spiders are venomous in some form. Inject the venom and then pull it deep into the tunnel.
That's a great cut point, that is.
Didn't get bit, no.
You didn't? Have you been bitten by anything? Insect? We talked about insects.
I mean, like, loads of, like weird bites in the jungle when you wake up in the morning and it's just something strange that doesn't look very right. My mate, oh my God, my mate Patch, we were out in the jungle, and I've always wanted one of these, and I've never had one in the years I've been going to the Amazon. Patch, bless him, poor Patch. He's a geography teacher, and he's coming out with some, biology teacher. Coming out onto this trip where there's university students and, like, learning about the rainforest, catching some bats and birds and doing lots of amazing things. And went out into the jungle. It's in the wet season, so in the summer, it's lots of rain. And he started getting these scratches on his face. Anyway, it turns out, has anyone ever heard of a bot fly? Okay. It's like a worm, that a fly, they're amazing, these flies. It's like a really big dipteran fly, so kind of like a blue bottle or, you know, your average fly that you find, but it's a really big one. And they can catch mosquitoes, and they lay their eggs on the underside of the mosquito, and then heat makes that egg drop. So when the mosquito lands on your face or your head, or if they lay their eggs on the end of a leaf and it drips down on an animal trail when an animal's walking by, and as soon as it touches your skin, the little eggs hatch and they burrow in. And then those worms start taking up shop and they start eating your flesh. And he had 2 on his cheek right next to each other of these worms, and they just grow and grow and grow and grow, and they can grow up to about an inch big. Really thick grubs
wiggling around
skin.
under the skin.
Yeah. If anyone wants to check out my social media and watch that worm be extracted from his face by his girlfriend Josie, you can give me a follow.
What is your social media?
Oh, it's Dan O Wild, all one word.
Dan O Wild,
Yeah.
or one word. There we go. I'll be checking that out later.
But yeah, no, I enjoyed that a lot.
So you've avoided.
No.
those.
So for spiders, they pretty much leave you alone. I don't like them. I feel like it's because I've evolved properly and like they're all venomous. So if I don't want to touch it. And snakes pretty much the same. Pretty angry little noodles, and I love them. They're really interesting. Love their evolutionary history. Don't want to get bitten by one. But yeah, no, I typically have stayed away. I've been very lucky. Stung by a scorpion, put my foot in my boot, and it stung the end of my toe, and that was fucking horrible.
How, like comparative to like a bee or a wasp sting, how bad is a scorpion sting?
It's hard to remember exactly. It was in Mexico, and it was more the shock. Because, you know, you put your foot in your shoe for a bit of comfort so you can walk around. And it just was, like, horrible. I think it was probably like a bee or a wasp sting. It wasn't too bad.
But I imagine the fear of what has stung you is probably worse than, yeah. Were you scared you were going to be in trouble from that, or did you know that it wouldn't be a problem for you?
As soon as I saw the scorpion and it had quite big pincers, I knew it was fine. If they have big pincers, that's their typical defense mechanism, and that's what they use to get themselves out of trouble. And if they have tiny, tiny little pincers, it shows you that they don't need those pincers because their venom is incredibly powerful, and that's when you need to worry.
Good. I'm glad we all know that. When we saw you there with the bird-eating spider, it looked like on camera you were really close, like kind of inches away. I mean, I'm assuming that you were close, but maybe not in striking distance.
Oh no, I was that close.
You were.
Oh, striking. Oh yeah, probably could have jumped on me if it wanted to.
If it turned, would it have just
really
turned around
fast.
and send you?
No,
yeah?
I mean it's like all animals. I mean, like vipers, right? So the vipers, spiders, they don't want to touch you. Like you have to piss it off quite a lot to make it bite you. Really, it just wants to get away because venom is. You know, it's incredibly taxing. It takes a huge amount of energy to produce that venom, and the reason they make that venom isn't to like sting or bite one of you or I. It's so they can subdue and kill their prey, so they can eat it, and so they will save it at all costs. Like for example, vipers, like the fer-de-lance, it's the worst one in the Amazon. You really don't want to get bitten by it. It's got a necrotic venom, and it will just rot your foot away. It's really nasty. But they will often dry bite. So they will bite someone, but they won't inject any venom because they don't want to lose it. So really, a lot of the time, they're just trying to get away from you.
And is that the same in the wild? So like an animal won't use its venom even in the wild against other animals or other predators or similar animals to themselves?
Yeah, a pit viper, like fer-de-lance or the adder we have in the UK. Most bites are dry bites. They won't. If they know that they're not going to eat something, they'll do everything they can to save that venom.
Phew, safe.
So not all the time. And also, if they're babies, they don't have the mechanism to stop envenomating. So actually, baby snakes are more dangerous than adult ones.
And going back to the movie magic that does take place, that particular example you're telling us, actually, you were in very close proximity. But I mean, kind of lifting the lid on the industry, what sort of like cheating goes on in terms of getting the shot?
I guess it depends. I mean, there's some horror stories I've heard back in the 90s of where people would move animals to certain places and do like dodgy things. But you know, nowadays it's pretty good in terms of the ethics. Like the BBC is really on where that shot's come from and how it's been obtained. But Yeah, I mean, there's 1,000,001 different mechanisms that people use. Like, there's often captive animals or like semi-habituated animals that are used a lot. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Seven Worlds, One Planet, the pumas and the guanacos in Patagonia. Those pumas have been studied for decades. They're one of the most studied groups of cats in the world. Pumas are very shy animals, but they've been studied so much that humans can just sit next to them. They just literally ignore you. They know their guanacos is what they eat, the big llama-like things. And that's typically what the goals are, like, with finding the right places to go. It's finding the most habituated or how to get habituated to the animal.
What I always think, what is like left to discover? What's left to study, or where's the kind of novelty in it anymore? Because, like you say, everything's been researched and studied and filmed and documented.
Well, we're finding things out all the time. You know, I think it was in 2017 we discovered a new species of orangutan, the Tampanuli orangutan. And we in the science community, you know, we're going into like a huge new world through genetics, where we're seeing new species, where there's a whole new world that's at our fingertips now of microbes and what the world actually looks like. And there are species still to be discovered. You know, there's also de-extinction, bringing things back, that started to happen. But, you know, we also discovered the Formosan clouded leopard recently in Taiwan that was thought to be extinct, and there is a confirmed sighting of it coming out of the forest. There's huge tracts of wild space that's still, you know, relatively intact. You know, Australia is massive. So is, you know, the Congo River Basin, the Amazon, huge tracts of the Amazon. Nobody's even studied the species diversity. When we go up on these remote expeditions, if we were to take up some mist nets at night, we'd almost definitely find a new species of bat in certain areas of the Amazon. In one particular spot that we were in a few years ago in the Iwakrama forest in Guyana, there's 96 different species of bat there, and Dr. Burton Lim, who's been studying them for years, has found 6 species just on his own. There's loads of things out there to be discovered still, and I think people forget that because we see so much of the same stuff on screen. You know, we see polar bears, lions, all these things, but there are amazing animals you'll have never seen and heard of that are still out there.
Sounds like there's a lot of content out there if you're prepared to go out on a
I put this little video up of a bird. It's called an Amazonian royal flycatcher that we caught in the jungle. And it has this crazy crest that you never see unless it's in your hand as a defense mechanism or when it's mating. And people were out there being like, what the hell is that? Like bird enthusiasts were like, that's not a real bird. You made it up. But they're out there.
If I mean, how like attainable is it for somebody sat in the audience who wants to be a filmmaker, inspired by what you've said, they want to go off and do their own adventure and document it, and then potentially have this similar sort of success and have a short film that you've created that's had a couple of million views? I mean, is it possible for them to do that? And if so, how would they do that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think like you can make content now on any sort of medium, and it doesn't really matter how, like, you don't have to have the best camera to make the best story, and you've definitely seen that through social media. Like, the really highest quality things don't often get as much as the things filmed on a phone. But I think, you know, everyone here who studied film, it's all about storytelling. You know, if all you've got to do is find the story, and if there's a compelling story, and whether it's at home or abroad, and you can fit it within the parameters of what a story is, then you're onto a winner. Like when, for me, it's always about a quest. And you know, they say there's 7 stories, but I'm always on a quest. There's a goal that I have, and along my goal to find that thing, I learn about it and I meet people, and it's usually pretty run and gun when I make films. But like sometimes I see. You see films that it's just about one particular person in a community who's got a very strange relationship with an animal, and it makes such a beautiful film. My friend Archie Wilson made this film a couple of years ago, and loads of people on his master's course had gone around the world to make these films, and he was like, he didn't have the money to go abroad, so he was like, I'm going to do it here in the UK. And he found this woman obsessed with red squirrels.
Oh, I love a red squirrel.
Oh yeah, they're great. Well, she likes them maybe a little bit too much.
Not in a saucy way.
She likes them, I think, in a bit of a creepy way.
Oh dear.
She's got squirrels all over her house, like pictures of squirrels, like human-sized wooden squirrels. She's got camera traps rigged all across her garden, and she's got bright red hair as well. She looks absolutely, honestly, it's iconic. And she loves them so much, she goes out with a shotgun and shoots any grey squirrel she finds. And there's like Daily Mail articles about her calling her a squirrel xenophobe. But she's like, but it's a brilliant story.
It's a good story,
and I mean,
is.
she is pretty, it's quite tough, but I don't know if anybody knows about this, but grey squirrels are actually not native to the UK. Our native squirrel's the red squirrel, and grey squirrels came across, and they carry this thing called squirrel pox, which they're immune to, and when it gets into our red squirrel population, it can kill them within a matter of weeks, sometimes days. And so even just touching the same feeder as a red squirrel is enough to transmit the virus, and they will die. So one of the best ways to keep red squirrels alive in the UK, as with many conservation initiatives with invasive species, is to kill the invader. And that's what people do with red squirrels in certain areas. And that's all she's doing, but maybe in a slightly brutal way. But he made that film about this woman, and oh my God, it's amazing. It's so good.
Where can we see that? Because it sounds awesome.
It's online. It's called Red or Dead.
Red or Dead. Not the seminal brand that was created some years ago.
There you go.
They are. Where can you find red squirrels in Britain?
They're all over. There's loads of little pockets that you can find them in the UK.
Is there anywhere close? What's closest to here?
There's a population in Wales, I think.
It's Wales.
Yeah. But you can go up north. They're actually popping up around. Anyone know the nearest? Anyone really into red squirrels?
Just me.
Yeah, there you go. Thought they could tell us where.
And you talked there, which I think you really hit the nail on the head, broadly speaking, around finding the story. As soon as you told us about that lady and you kind of painted that picture of her shooting grey squirrels with a shotgun, I think or most people would be like, that sounds really wrong, but I'm interested. But this is something that you do, isn't it? Because you work in commissioning and developing ideas. So how have you got into that? And that might be an inspiration for people here as well.
Yeah, I love development. I find it so interesting. I love storytelling. There's a book called Into the Woods. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's really interesting about storytelling. All the jobs I've done outside of my own indie films or as a presenter in natural history TV, I work in development. So I'm a developer, and I'll come up with ideas for other presenters, and come up and format ideas and things like that. I've just worked on a format idea that we're giving to a big production house, and that's where you write treatments. You think of the idea, you write the treatment, you write the words out, and then you talk to the commissioners, the people who are making the decisions, and then you sell them those ideas based on your treatments and what you've got access to. And it's really finding access and finding a story, and it's really helpful as a presenter because I learnt how to develop shows for myself, and it sped up the process quite a lot actually.
So you were doing that before? Yeah.
Before I presented, I was in development.
So just to kind of clarify that then, so you come up with an idea, and it's not exactly always related to wildlife, I'm assuming.
Not all the time, yeah.
So you come up with a great idea, you draw out what the idea looks like, and then you said about access. Can you just clarify what you mean around that? So you've got your idea, what's the access part?
So there's several things that a commissioner will be interested in a lot of the time. It's is the access particularly privileged? For example, a bit of access that I'm not saying go and get this access, it's very hard to find, but there's no one who's allowed into the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, the DMZ. If someone was to be granted access to go and see what was in there, to film the animals, that would be unprecedented access, and that on its own would be a commission for television, I reckon. Well, yes, it 100% would be if you got access to the DMZ. Things like that. If it's a project related to lions, say, and they were translocating a lion to a new area of Africa that lions have been extirpated or extinct from for generations, that's a really strong idea to begin a narrative around lion conservation, get a presenter in. Things like that. That's what I mean by access.
And in terms of that access, can you pass that access on? Because from the way it sounded then, it's like you're developing an idea, you attach some access, and then you can sell that as a package. Mm-hmm. So you can sort of pass that, you can connect up the commissioner with your access and sell it together.
Well, yeah, only if the people that giving the access are open to that idea. I remember there was a series, so a really good friend of mine who did my master's program, she's called Lindsay Parietti. brilliant political journalist before she went into wildlife, and she made her student film with this family called the Desmonds, who basically rescue, rehabilitate and release baby chimps into the wild in Liberia. And she made her student film on that, and then thought, there's something bigger here. And she met up with Professor Ben Garrett, the evolutionary biologist and primate expert who'd worked under Jane Goodall. And he knew the Desmonds himself, and they concocted this idea to go and follow them in a bigger series, which ended up being a 3-part series on BBC Two, Baby Chimp Rescue. And she pitched that straight after her master's, and it got commissioned within a matter of weeks because of that access to the Desmonds, who typically wouldn't have given out that. And it was because Lindsay was there, she was working on the production, Ben was the presenter of the series, and all of that together gave them the confidence in the Desmonds that this was going to be done in the right way. But you couldn't then be like, thank you, Desmonds. Right, we've got the access. Some random person, here you go, take it. It wouldn't quite work like that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about pretty grandiose sounding stories here in terms of their reach internationally, and the access is quite exotic sounding, but that access for people in the room, if they have ideas that they are in your position to kind of sell on, could just be, or to pitch themselves, could just be access to like their mate who built the most intricate Lego building ever, or their sister's friend who's an ice dancer, couldn't it?
100%, and ideas are such a currency of television. I mean, if you're an ideas person and you can come up with ideas really quickly, that's gold dust, and not everybody has that ability. Like, it's something to really nurture. And you know, you don't have to you could be a camera operator and have an amazing idea and sort of like go into that conversation being like, this is my idea, I want to find a producer, I want to find a presenter, I want to find, if it's not presenter-led, I want to find the people to help make it. All I want to do is shoot on it. You know, you can get access to things yourself through your ideas, and you can like reach out to, say, a presenter if you were interested in mountain biking, like we were speaking about earlier. You could come up with an idea, write a treatment of what your idea could be, and then send that to the person you were interested in working with. This just reminded me, actually. So it's not TV, but anyone know Imogen Heap, the musician? Did a song called Hide and Seek. Well, I was obsessed with her music as a kid. Yeah, that's the one. Really, she would enjoy this. Well, thank you very much. Beautiful rendition. Well, she's brilliant, and she's the first person I ever followed on Twitter back in 2008 when Twitter began. And because no one knew what Twitter was, she followed me back, and I waited because I was like, if I message her now, she's gonna be like, who's this child, and then delete me. So I waited for ages until I came up with a concept about working with her using wildlife sounds that I'd been collecting for the past decade on my expeditions, to work with her to produce music while either on location or for a project. And she replied and was like, that sounds really cool. I'd love to work with you. To my absolute shock, I couldn't believe it. And she introduced me to all her team. Anyway, that one conversation, that one treatment that I sent her in a Twitter message ended up with her and I co-making the music for Kate Blanchett's podcast, Climate of Change. And it just shows that those little like sparks can turn into something, and don't like just think it's ridiculous and not do it, because so many people will tell you your ideas are stupid until they get made, and then they're the ones that look silly.
It's just like the confidence though that you had to, and I know it's sort of happenstance, but the confidence you had to reach out, seeing your own value, your own passion, and the congruence behind that, and then that resonating with someone else. And that's kind of the world we live in now, isn't it? Those connections can be made.
Yeah, totally, and more so than ever before. You know, the internet's democratized everything. The gatekeepers of the past that wouldn't let you have an email address or let you talk to anyone, it just doesn't exist anymore. The other day, I just reached out to a series producer working on something I wanted to work on. Like, you can do it, and I think people they like passion. People want to work with people who are passionate, and if you're passionate, it's not bad to send someone a message, ask them for a coffee. Do you know what I mean?
What shouldn't you do, though, if you're going to reach out to people or try and make those connections?
The definite thing I would say, if you're going to reach out to someone, don't send the typical message, which is like, hi, I really want to do what you do or something in your on your area. Can you give me some advice on how I can do that? Because no one wants to reply to that. I mean, a lot of people will, but that's really generous of them. I think what is a useful thing to do is learn about that person, find out what they do, and try to offer them something. Like, if you go, hey, I've got this really great idea, I think you're the perfect person to look at it. I'd love to see if you think there's anything behind it, even if you would just look at the work that I've made on it so far and give me some advice. That would be so cool. But you've offered them something, like told them that maybe they could do it or something. Do you know what I mean? Just don't just take. Always try to offer.
You talked a little bit about coming up with ideas. And is there any ideas people in the room? We've got ideas people. Yeah, hands going up. This person down here, right? Can I get you put your hand up? We haven't heard from you yet. Oh, I heard from you yesterday. You're an ideas person, yeah? You've got. Oh, okay. And do you want to pitch one of them at us? Like, it's got to be like an elevator pitch, though. We don't want you like 25 minutes. We want your like one like 3 or 4 sentences to pitch, please.
Okay, so I think the first big project I'm going to make, solo.
Time's up. No, I'm joking. cut to the chase, bro.
Okay. So it's called Justice for Riley. It's based on 12 Angry Men. It's basically just like a college version of that. So you've got these 10 college students who they come together after a day at college to discuss the murder of a fellow student. It's meant to teach social responsibility and justice, to show, basically I'm trying to explain that everyone should have an involvement in trying to stay loyal to their close ones, people that are close in their lives, even after they've departed. And it's also meant to show that anyone can be strong no matter what age, gender, race they are.
Remind me of your name, please.
It's Jack.
Jack. So Jack's just given us a great pitch. Well done, Jack. He's just pitched an idea. I like the idea of like 12 angry men set in a college environment, because that for me that really kind of cements the idea. How would Jack then protect that? I mean, he's just given it away to everybody, but I suppose if this is recorded, then there's some protection there. But how do you copyright your ideas and prevent someone just plagiarising or stealing them?
Well, I know somebody who registered their idea on an intellectual property thing on the internet before they took it in, which is quite smart because it's there, it's registered. Me personally, if I always do it in an email. It's not protected if it's in a text or on a phone call. Send it in an email, and there is protection there. Write the treatment. Write a full realised idea. And if it's realised and fully written down, then that is the idea. If you just say to someone in the pub, this is my idea, then they write it into something of their own sort. There's very muddy waters there. So if you've really written it all down before you send it to anyone, then there's no denying that that's when it is. Sent an email, there's a timestamp. With me personally as a presenter, I've got an agent. So when someone brings something through with me, it'll go through my agent, and she protects things like tooth and nail. So it's just making sure that it's gone through the right channels. Yeah.
And I suppose that's all you can do, but not to sound too cynical. Let's just say Jack did that, and then a big studio kind of stole that idea, tweaked it a bit, made it their own. I mean, really, Jack. I'm sure Jack's a multi-millionaire, but if he's not, then how is he going to afford to be able to fight that copyright claim anyway?
It's a real problem. Actually, one of the people I worked with at the very early on in my career said, come up with ideas quicker than people can steal them, because it is real, then people do take ideas. Like my agents told me about stories of this happening to her clients over the years. Something like that has happened to me once before in my career. It happens. It's really annoying. It sucks. Do everything you can to stop it happening. There are bad people out in the world that will do that sort of thing to you, but try to not become cynical and try to keep going, and know in the fact that if you came up with an incredible idea once and someone took it from you, hopefully it won't happen again, but you have the ability to come up with more. And also don't work with people who take people's ideas. Like, have your little black book in your mind about who's good and who's bad, because if more people did that, then these sorts of issues wouldn't happen so much.
Phased out. Just before we watch the next clip, you mentioned your agent there. So people in the audience that are kind of plotting careers as filmmakers and presenters or actors or any creative industry, what's the kind of role of your agent? How did you get an agent, and what's the importance of having one? And is that from a presenter's perspective or from a filmmaker's perspective?
So I had a kind of weird route into it. I when I was doing my masters, I founded a company, a touring wildlife film festival. And Jo Sarsby, my agent, she runs a theatre side of her company that takes things on tour. So I reached out to her about taking my film festival on tour, and she signed me up for that. And then it wasn't until, and I was working in TV outside of that as well. And then I went on an expedition with some of my colleagues in a science capacity and to look for jaguars. And I video diaried every day of it, and it was always kind of my dream to do that. And she saw the rushes afterwards and literally said to me, I was in the office, and she goes, Hayley, who worked in the office as well, she goes, Jo, come look at this. She watches like 30 seconds of it because she's so experienced, she knows what she's looking for already. And she just said, cut this into a 12-minute show reel and then meet me tomorrow. Sent it to her, and she was like, meet me in Boston Tea Party, which is a cafe in Bristol. And I met her, and she said, do you want to be a presenter? Do you want to come on? And that's how it worked for me to get her. It's various different ways of getting into it, but she is an absolute legend. If I didn't have Jo as my agent, I would not be anywhere near where I am with my career. She completely supports all of my endeavours. She tells me off when I need to. She whips me into act when I need it as well. But she defends me. She makes sure that she's having communication about me with commissioners. It's a long game, and she says that at the beginning, that like it's not going to happen overnight, and it's definitely a two-way street. You don't just get an agent and then like everything happens and she goes and gets you loads of work. You have to strive, you have to make your own projects, you have to get your own things, and then you hand it over to her and she gets you some of it. It's definitely a two-way street working with an agent. But yeah, it's just having an agent is really helpful because it gives you a strategy. It's somebody who's had experience working with people, like whether it's an acting agent or a presenting agent, doing this for years. And yeah, that's what she gives to me. But it's definitely two-way street. Like a lot of my own projects are all on my own. Like I've come up with a lot of my own ideas. My Honduras trip is my idea. The expeditions I do are my ideas. All of her other clients are exactly the same. A good friend of mine on her books, Lizzie Daly, does all of her own stuff as well. She's off hiking in Finland and making content, filming bits and bobs all the time. You know, she's doing her PhD on the side. Agents are there to support and to bring you up. And then when you get further down your career, they're there to manage the things that are coming in. So people like Steve Backshaw, who Jo looks after as well, like he's getting so many things coming in all the time, and she's helping to manage that in his diary.
Brilliant. Well, I think because we're going to try and wrap up within the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes, I think it would be great to watch another clip. So I think we have one more to look at. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I think there's a few.
It's for the side. Yeah, this is one we talked about earlier, isn't it? So this is portage, isn't it?
This is what it takes to get up into the remote parts of the jungle. It takes all of us nearly the whole day to heave 2 tons of equipment up this vertical jungle.
And that's because there's you've got to move from one river to another.
This is just going up a waterfall in the river, so it's like a bit of rapids, and you've got to get through the jungle. Just this one down now.
I didn't see you pushing that boat up the hill.
Hey, I was pushing it. All right, don't you still. We go and get the other boat. See, I'm pretty sweaty.
Yeah, you look like you've been pushing it.
This is the first. This is the first time I ever saw a snow leopard.
It is a snow leopard. Oh my God.
How long have you been searching?
Quite a while.
Oh my God.
But this, I'll tell you afterwards just how lucky this was.
Oh my God, it's moving. I can't believe it. Oh. Oh my God.
This is take 1, right?
Yeah. No, this is take 17.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You get so close, you can see it without the scope. Oh my God. Wait, look, is it a rock? Is it a rock? God. I need to look again.
Maybe there are 2. Because the left one is also maybe smaller, you know? It's not moving, but there is something on the left.
It is. Is that 2? Is it just 1?
Maybe there are 2.
There's absolutely no denying now. He's just sat up, he's looking right at us, he's moving his head around.
That is a cat. That is a very big, snowy cat. Oh my God.
Does it still give you like a tingle to see it?
It's a weird day, that. I didn't think we were going to see it, honestly.
You've got tears in your eyes, haven't you?
It's a bloody snow leopard. Oh, I can't believe it.
I saw one in a zoo and I was just like spellbound.
They're incredible.
It's like a mixture between
Utter, unadulterated happiness and like the biggest sense of relief you can possibly imagine.
Relief because of the mission complete.
We're looking at... Because BBC Earth weren't going to buy my footage if I didn't see it. Oh my God, look at it.
100%.
Yeah, it's an absolute snow leopard. That's the face of a snow leopard. Yeah. Yes. What number snow leopard is this for you?
Number 4, I'm a 4.
That's the 4th snow leopard you've ever seen. How long have you been working here?
50, 60 times. I don't count now, you know.
Oh my God. Look, it's gone.
See, now it's gone, you know. We came in time.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, that's one of those experiences that for me it's all about that, because that was totally random. We never thought that was going to happen. It was...
I can see it's like it's still in you,
I mean,
it's still moving for you.
It was unbelievable. We had gone up there with the Snow Leopard Trust, who I work with a lot now, and I'm doing a lot more stuff in the future with them. But we'd gone up to set camera traps, 40, 50 camera traps in this very remote reserve on the border of China and the Tian Shan Mountains in Kyrgyzstan. And, you never think you're going to see an animal like that. There's between 3,000 and 5,000 snow leopards left in the wild, in the whole world, across 12 Central Asian countries, sprawling Central Asian countries. They're really, really hard to find. And we were walking through this little ravine, and this team from Kyoto University had left a camera trap. They're a video camera trap, and usually we would never touch another team's camera traps, but because it was video, we couldn't help ourselves. And we wanted to check that it was working, obviously. And we opened it up, and it had actually stopped working. So it was really good that we checked, because we could reset the cameras, but there were no pictures in there, and it took us ages to faff around, do all of that stuff. And it was checking that camera trap that showed us that snow leopard, because while we were doing it, we turned around and it was watching us just up there. And it's just weird how you can have a moment like that where just all these random things align and just something totally mad happens. And it was just the most spectacular moment of my career, probably.
Sounds like life. Interesting. You also said that you have, and maybe there's a lesson here for people generally from a production standpoint, that you've might have lost a bit of footage here along the way.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of footage goes astray. And I imagine, the cataclysmic event that would be if you lost that footage.
Oh, don't. Why would you even say that?
Because I've been on... Because I used to work at Spool Films downstairs, and we worked on productions, and students had lost footage, very important footage, when they were coming and working with us. So I just think anything that you can do very early on to ensure that does not happen. So what protocol do you have in place?
Always back up your footage. Bring 2 hard drives, always. That's obviously. If you're going anywhere, put on 2 hard drives. Use a good bit of software. I don't know which ones you teach to use for DITing or offloading, but use a bit of software that makes it go in the right place. Pull the whole folder over. Don't just pull the clips over. Don't want to risk any of that stuff. And also just have the 2 hard drives in 2 separate locations. If you're leaving a location, have one in one bag and one in another bag. Don't put them both in the same bag. You might lose your bag. And also maybe don't put it in 2 of the same person's bag. One in one person's bag and one in another person's bag. And when you get back, try and upload it onto a drive link somewhere in the cloud. Just and especially those really, really important pieces of footage, just save it at all costs. Yeah, lots of different versions. I mean, I was saying just earlier, the first time I saw a tiger, and I'm still looking for the footage of where I filmed it. It was so beautiful. But yeah, it's my own fault.
Well, we've covered a lot. I think there might be some hands going up, so probably a good time to take a couple of questions before we think about wrapping up. Have we, team at the back, have we covered all the clips now? Because we've lost count. One more. Okay.
So maybe,
do we know which one it is? I don't know. It's a bonus prize that we will get at the end. So maybe we'll have that to sort of wrap up with. We've got a question at the back there, so if we can get roaming mic over. It might be... Well, I've got a feeling we won't need a microphone for you. Do you want to shout out your question? No, you wait for the microphone. It's coming over. This might be last chance to ask any questions then. So if you've got them, shout them out now because we'll watch the clip and then we'll wrap up.
Before I ask this question, I got another thing to say. Grey squirrels are rabid! And...
Grey squirrels are rubbish, I agree.
Rabid!
Oh, rabid,
yeah.
Thanks.
Another thing. Two questions. A question. Have you ever found a Lakenvelder? Because back in April 2022, I found a Lakenvelder while I was walking in Underwood.
A what, sorry?
A Lakenvelder.
A Lakenvelder?
It's a type of chicken.
Have you ever found a Lakenvelder?
You know, I never have, but I'm definitely going to go and look that up after this.
And have you ever been asked that question?
Sorry, I don't know what it is, but I'll look it up afterwards. And no, I guess I haven't.
It's your duty to know what that is.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
And and what was the most interesting animal you have ever seen? Where did you find it and why?
I would probably say, outside of all the ones you've already seen, probably when I was a little kid and I went to the next door neighbour's house and he had slow worms in his compost heap and I'd never seen anything like it in my life. They're like legless lizards. I don't know if you've ever seen them. We have them here in the UK. But that was just really weird and a very cool experience.
And they were in his compost. So the sort of exotic find in the mundane. Great. Any more questions?
Jack, get them. No, Jack, it's your turn.
Thank you. We got Jack again.
Thank you very much.
The microphone is coming to you. Then we've got another question down here. So let's just chart what we've got, because then we'll cap it. So we've got Jack, then got one down here, got one down there, got one down there. So we'll try and cover those and then see. But I think that might take us up to time. So there was Jack was first. Jack's green top.
Come on, Jack. What was the question? It's coming right now. Then you'll be satisfied. What would you say would be the riskiest encounter with any kind of animal that you've had during the years you've been exploring?
Okay, so I'm wrong with the one that I think. So when I was in Botswana, we were looking for lions, and I was stood up in the back of the car. Really stupid thing that I did. You should never, ever make yourself look different to the shape of the car when you're looking at an animal like a lion. You sit down, but we were all a bit complacent. We were very hot, and I stood up. It was asleep, and it woke up suddenly, looked at me, the shape that it had towering above it, and it took a start towards me, the male lion. I literally felt my soul leave my body, and I was like,
and something else leave your body as well.
I just like completely, soiled myself. And I sat down, and I just like couldn't stand up for a bit, and they were like, "Come on, Dad, carry on." I was like, "I can't do it." It was really scary, but the lion was never going to touch me, and they all knew that it wasn't. I just hadn't been in that experience before. No, the actual most dangerous was when I didn't think I was in that much danger. Was in Australia when a 6-metre saltwater crocodile was following our boat, and I got too close to the edge of the boat because I was just so into it and I really wanted to talk about it. And the producer-director, Della, was like, "Get away from the boat, get away from the boat, get away from the side of the boat, Dan. The crocodile's going to launch out of the water. It's an ambush hunter. It's evolved to do this." And I was just getting too close, and it was really... There was a moment where Della was like, and she's an expert with crocodiles, was like, it could have taken you then at that one point. So that was probably the most dangerous, 6-metre saltwater crocodile.
Hello, Mr. Crocodile.
Yeah, I was so stupid, but I just really wanted to get the shot.
Got this question down here, then we've got two down the front here. Oh, and one back there. We might have to cap it there. I've just seen your hand go up.
What's your favourite niche fact about an animal?
Okay, there's this fantastic book from Richard Dawkins called The Greatest Show on Earth, and it talks about loads of different incredible things about biodiversity around the world. And one of my favourite facts is that nematodes are an incredibly diverse group of creatures on our planet. They're tiny, tiny little things, and if you were to get a garden trowel and pick it up, there would be about 90,000 nematodes in that trowel of Earth. That's not the fact that I'm amazed by. What I'm most amazed by is the fact that if you were to remove absolutely everything from the planet, all of the people, all of the stuff, all of the atoms, every single other thing other than nematodes, you would still see a ghostly outline of everybody in this room, all of the items in the room. You'd see that light, you'd see everything, because that's how many nematodes there are. They're all crawling all over your body, in your eyes, everywhere. Really
how small are we talking?
Microscopic. Yeah, very, very small. Another one is mind control is real. I don't know if you guys have been watching The Last of Us. Anyone been watching The Last of Us?
Bella Ramsey, Nottingham actor.
Yeah, absolutely love them. They're like an amazing cast. Bella Ramsey,
Bella Ramsey, went to Television
Confetti.
Workshop.
Yeah, she follows this. Well, that is a mind control parasite called cordyceps. There are huge numbers of different species of cordyceps all over the world. They are real, and they do mind control insects. They make them climb to a certain point where for that fungus it's the perfect humidity, it's the perfect height for it to release its spores. And they're not the only animals that do that. There are a huge array of different mind controlling parasitic animals in the world. There's a fluke worm that gets into ants, and it needs to get itself into cows. So during the day, the ant will do its normal tasks for the queen, and then at night, when the sun isn't beating down, when it could be desiccated, it walks to the edge of a blade of grass and is zombified and waits to be eaten by a cow. And if it isn't eaten by a cow that night, the parasite stops its work, and it will carry on its day working for the queen, and the next night sit at the top of a blade of grass.
That is nuts.
Parasitism is everywhere, and mind control is everywhere. There's even one that affects us called Toxoplasma gondii. It's a rat parasite and a cat parasite. And what it wants to do is be eaten by a cat. So when it gets into rats, it makes the rats more prone to risky behaviour. It makes them more prone to be like the smell of cat urine and the smell of cats, so that cats will eat it. What's crazy about it is it's just similar enough to get into us that they have done studies that show if we are infected by Toxoplasma gondii ourselves, we're more at risk of jaywalking and even more at risk of doing risky sexual behaviour. So yeah, pretty interesting. So maybe The Last of Us isn't quite so far away after all.
What an insight there. You were not expecting that, were you? If we've gained nothing else from this this talk.
There you go.
Brilliant.
And about 60% of the population of the UK are infected by Toxoplasma.
So if anyone wants
through your friends who that might be.
Anyone wants risky sex with you, they may be a victim.
Hang on, not with me, all right?
Not with
Jesus
you. Not with you.
Christ.
Not with you, generally. I'm just thinking generally. Let's move on. We had 2 questions on it, 1 it. So let's try and do that. This person here, there's a bespectacled person, two bespectacled people.
Hi, I'm quite into doing animal photography, and I'd love to do some like wildlife cinematography. Do you know what like the best way would be to get like my work out and try and get my foot in the industry, kind of?
Yeah, really great that you want to do that. And I guess that's the first thing. I mean, knowing that you want to do it is massive. I think a really good idea would be to consider, you don't need to, but consider moving to Bristol. If it's really what you want to do, that's the place to be. You'll be in those communities. Keep an eye out for bursary schemes. And get yourself work do you know if you want to be a blue chip camera operator? Do you know the difference between blue chip and sync?
Not too sure, no.
Okay, so blue chip is where there's no sync. It's all filmed with no sync.
No audio.
No audio, and there's no presenter. It's just like Planet Earth, Blue Planet 2, Frozen Planet style stuff, Our Planet, where it's the natural history, the animal, and you're sat in a hide, long lens and motion control, lots of different things. So that, if you want to get into that, a really good way to do it is to try and get some work as a camera assistant, assisting camera operators on those shoots, and apply for those roles in-house in those companies like Wildstar Films, Silverback, BBC, Natural History Unit in Bristol. And you can also try and get a job as the kit coordinator in any of those companies. I know people have gone straight into bursary schemes from those kit coordinator roles, so they're getting to know the kind of kit that they're using on those productions, which is really important. So, and also get yourself a specialism in a piece of kit that not everybody is very, very good at. For example, I know that Gail, the person that I know who's now working as a cinematographer for Nat Geo, etc., she got told that piece of advice, and she learned how to use motion control really well. So now when she goes on those productions, not many people know how to use motion control, so the pool of people you're competing with is a lot smaller. And if you're interested in doing sync, so it's a bit of wildlife and you're shooting the animals there, but then you go to a presenter, a really good way to do that is reach out to people who want to do presenting online and maybe make some content with them. They often have good networks. For example, when I met Chris Beard, the guy that I work with a lot, we actually met on a boat going to see sharks off the coast, south coast of the UK. And now we've done so many projects together that we complement each other. I've put him forward for things, he's put me forward for things. We worked on the same projects together. And just get yourself a community of people that you work with and make your own content with, and make yourself a show reel. That's a big one.
Wow, amazing advice. Amazing advice. So we've got two more questions. One just behind here, and then it'll be you.
Well, just to start, with everything, just as another person called Jack, I was very confused just then. But my question is, what is like sort of like the funniest sort of looking animal you've seen? Sort of funny.
Other than human beings.
I think funniest that I've seen myself.
Or generally.
I want to think about that because there are some really weird creatures out there. The Suriname toad's really weird. It's really weird. Does anyone know what trypophobia is? When you're like scared of holes, don't ever see a
Scared of
Suriname.
what?
Scared of holes.
Holes.
Like little like holes.
Oh,
it's so gross.
Okay. Right.
So like you imagine, so the kind of holes that you imagine like a maggot's just been pulled out of.
Oh, like that, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Suriname toad has loads of holes on its back, and its eggs develop in its back, and then they're born and they kind of live in its back for a bit. It's so disgusting, but they're so cool. And there's loads of creatures like that, and I think that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Or anacondas. Their eyes are positioned on the top of their head, same as giant river otters. All those animals that spy hop and use the water, their eyes aren't positioned in the same way as lots of other species in their group, so they're actually lifted higher onto the head, and it makes them look really derpy.
Cool. So we got one more question back here, and then we will have to wrap that up. Bottomless pits.
I will do.
You remember that one.
Sorry,
it was the person behind you. We now you've intercepted. That was a clever move. You can ask the question, but it's got to be quick.
Hi, I just wanted to know a bit more about your Wilderland that you founded.
Yeah.
Wilderland.
Wilderland. It's Wilderland, whatever you want to call it. So that's the film festival that I started. That is currently on hold at the moment. I do it. I've been doing it for the past few years, but I've got a lot of projects coming out at the moment that I want to do it justice when I do another tour. So I've kind of stopped it for the moment, and I'm not opening for submissions just yet. But I will be in the future. So just keep up to date on my socials if you're keen on going to the event. Do you know? So basically, what it is it's just a series of short films. It's between 7 and 12 short films selected each year, and lots of them are student films, but basically the idea is they have to have some connection to wildlife, the environment or conservation, and we take them on a tour around the UK. First year we did 26 cities, another year we did 15. It totally depends on what we're doing that year, and we show them to the general public, because a lot of the time these films people like yourselves might make, they're used as a calling card to get into the industry, and then they never get seen further than that, and so we're just trying to get them out and those messages seen by the wider public.
It's fantastic. It was interesting that that festival, setting that festival up was a calling card for you to get your agent, So it just goes to show that kind of like creating an industry around yourself, bringing people to you is the way to kind of broaden.
And on our first year, we selected a film called Saina's Story by a woman called Gail Podrabski, who is a member of I didn't know at the time, but a member of the board of trustees for the Snow Leopard Trust, and she's the one who introduced me to everybody that eventually led to the creation of that series for BBC Earth. So there's like so many different ways to get so many different connections.
So supporting other people then supports yourself. I did promise you then, go on then, you have to be super, super quick.
I was just going to say I was scratching my head. I wasn't actually putting my hand
Oh,
up.
really? Oh, well, at least I
Brilliant.
look good now for being nice and letting you have that question rather than some horrible person. Cool. So it's been fascinating.
Thanks so much, guys.
I completely lost myself many, many times and forgot you were all here and had a nice and lovely chat. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we finish, or any sort of parting shots? Advice?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody is interested in any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on social media, and I'll try and help if I can. Something like that. Dan O'Wild, and it's usually at the end, so I forgot. It's not there. It's Dan O'Wild, or Dan O'Neill. You can find me that way. But yeah, I think if going into it, I think something that I think is important to know is that don't worry about everybody else around you and what they're doing. I was in that when I first started, and I wish that I know not to be. Stay in your own lane. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Do what makes you happy, and don't worry about the competitor green monster inside you. And it makes it a lot more fun. And there is enough space for everybody to be successful and everyone to have a good time. So don't worry about others. Worry about yourself.
Brilliant advice. I just want to say a huge thank you again to our tech team, to everybody here at Industry Week, to you lot. You've been an amazing audience. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for sitting there patiently and listening to us kind of chat. But a huge thank you to Dan O'Neill. So please,
thanks, guys.
Round of applause for Dan. Thank you very much. Been an absolute pleasure. Really, really enjoyable. Thank you to you all. Enjoy the rest of Industry Week. Don't miss these opportunities because you won't get this again. Like everyone I'm talking to saying this doesn't happen, so make the most of it. See you next time.
The sound for this one, it was a cuckoo, which is kind of quite a common sound, like common, recognisable. And I was a bit wary of it because I was like, oh no, everyone's going to know that it's cuckoo. But I don't know if you do. Anyway, so they started off with that. Yeah.
They're nasty birds, though.
Are they? Oh, yeah, because they steal the nests of other... Yes.
Yeah, not way worse than stealing the nest. They are amazing. They can copy the exact egg pattern of the animal parent, of the bird parent that they're laying.
That's amazing.
So as they're laying it, it's almost like they've got internal spray cans that are like... and then it lays instantly and they fly away, and then that chick will hatch first. The chick's first thing in life, the first thing it knows to do is to be like, right, got to kick out all of these other eggs.
Wow.
And it will just kick them all out, and then it will grow up, and then it will fly away and parasitise another bird.
That's
amazing. Just watching Bimini take shots right now, and it's electric. My name's Dan O'Neill. I'm a zoologist and wildlife presenter. For me, the ocean is a place that has helped me through some really challenging times. Working as a wildlife presenter, I've actually been told to play down my sexuality, which, as an LGBT person, brings back a huge amount